and welcome to season 3 of SOS. We are going to begin with a very important Summer Wells update, and this update is a review of a group of images that have been extracted from Candace Bly's phone, and these images span from March of 2021 to June of 2021, so long before Summer's disappearance and a little while after. Before we start, I want to say thank you to Gamble Geeks on YouTube because it was from their video that I was able to source this content. So I highly encourage you to go over to Gamble Geeks and check out their version of the metadata timeline. My version is slightly more condensed so that we can review it and then we can segue right into a very important discussion. If you are unfamiliar with this case, which is not likely, but there are always people that have not heard of this case, you can go to my season 1 playlist and click on the video titled The Enigma of Summer Wells. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Let's continue to the metadata timeline. There is an array of speculative theories regarding what happened to Summer, including some theories suggesting she perished in an accident. People suspect that Summer drowned at the swimming hole at Warriors Path State Park. Some say she could have hit her head while at the swimming hole, which caused her to lose consciousness, and this resulted in her unintentional demise. For the most part, these theories involve some element of neglect or lack of sufficient care for Summer rather than intentional harm. Some content creators and armchair detectives have insisted that Summer was deceased in the milk photo, and they believe that it proves Summer was already deceased before coming home on June 15th. And they insist that the 911 call and her parents' insistence that she was abducted served merely to throw off the investigation into Summer's whereabouts. Summer would be attending kindergarten in September of that year, so her absence would have been noticed eventually. Could Dawn and Candace have provided a false narrative to intentionally obscure the truth? I don't know if we have enough information to say one way or the other, but this timeline certainly dispels some theories that we can now put to rest. Since the world began scrutinizing this case, some have expressed doubt that whatever happened to Summer took place on June 15th. There is a long-standing theory that she fell from the rooftop on the evening of June 14th, and that the abduction narrative was set into motion to cover up her parents' negligence. I believe it is just as likely that Dawn and Candace would have called an ambulance or taken Summer to a hospital. To me, it does not appear that Dawn and Candace cared, allegedly, enough to conceal their bad parenting habits. After all, Candace posted to TikTok regularly, showing her apparent use of substances and displaying the horrid living conditions of their property. Maybe you disagree, but tell me about it in the comments. Additionally, we can clearly tell from this timeline that Summer was, in fact, still alive and with the family for the majority of June 15th, effectively putting this theory to bed. This timeline does not necessarily dispel the possibility that Summer experienced other accidents, but it does suggest that whatever happened likely did not occur until she arrived home. With this information, theories that Summer had been sold or abducted may seem more credible, as the tight timeline better corroborates a premeditated act versus the cover up of an accident. Perhaps you disagree. I invite you to tell me why in the comments. One thing that was not clarified through this timeline is the 2.5 hours unaccounted for between the lady's arrival home on June 15th and the 911 call that was placed reporting Summer's disappearance. And I find this to be an interesting point of contention. Candace was an avid TikToker, whether she was posting or scrolling. And from what we see in the months leading up to June 15th, Candace frequently took photos and videos on her phone. Let's dial in on this and refer to one of the narrative accounts Candace told law enforcement about the events that transpired when she, Grandma, and Summer came home on June 15th. The primary narrative she has discussed is that they put the groceries away and then she, Grandma, and Summer planted cactuses and flowers outside of Grandma's trailer. Looking through this metadata, it seems reasonable to me that if such an event occurred, Candace would have likely taken photos or videos to document it. Candace documented Summer playing with new toys, documented her children's new clothes, documented them going on trips, and documented them doing outdoor activities. This bears an important question. Why are there no photos of this event? I'm not saying the narrative is a total sham, but I do find it suspicious and inconsistent that Candace would not have at least taken a couple of photos. Especially considering that after Summer's disappearance, Candace felt compelled to take a photo of Dawn sitting next to the exact flowers and cactuses she says she planted with Summer on June 15th. One benefit of this metadata timeline is that I can now refine the timeline I previously built around this case, as we now have more clarity around the arrival time home that day and their visit to Priceless grocery store. If you recall in my previous upload, I discussed that there was a huge discrepancy in time regarding the grocery store trip on June 15th. According to Hunter, they were in the grocery store for, I think he said, an hour, and according to Candace, she said they were in the store for minutes. Anyway, I plan on updating my timeline and then posting it to the channel. Perhaps not as a video, but as an image post for you all to reference. How Summer's upbringing shaped her world and possibly her fate. DCS, known as the Department of Children Services, visited the Wells home many times prior to Summer's disappearance, and according to Allie, these checks were scheduled, which gave Dawn and Candace time to clean up a little and hide their substances. This was good enough for CPS, shockingly, which boggles my mind because when you look closely at these photos, you begin to see the things that couldn't be concealed, like the raw exposed subflooring inside the home, the dilapidated state of the home's exterior and interior, the unkempt state of the land, and lack of fencing to contain Summer as she played in the yard. Summer's apparent tooth decay, and the fact that she no longer rode in a car seat. The gaggle of feral dogs that roamed freely on and off the property. It's surprising to me that I rarely see any discussion that the dogs may have played a role in Summer's disappearance. It's merely a theory like all the rest, but I look at it as yet another risk factor or environmental hazard in Summer's life. Among these risk factors, we see the lack of nutritious food within the images. In many of them, we see only processed food, which corroborates claims made by Allie. Allie said she prepared meals for the kids and brought them over on occasion because she knew the family very well, and she claims that Candace nor Dawn cooked regular meals for the children. We also see the lack of clean spaces for the children to sleep and play. These conditions are horrifying and should have never been deemed sufficient circumstances in which to raise children. I want to give more attention to this fact. Summer was not the only child in the home. She had 3 older brothers who were left at home alone on June 15th. The boys were temporarily removed from Dawn and Candace's care following Summer's disappearance. Eventually, DCS would shift that removal to a permanent status, and many people speculate why that is. It's clear to me that CPS realized it would be unacceptable to place these children back into Dawn and Candace's care, because although the circumstances of Summer's whereabouts remained unclear, DCS and the world now knew the conditions of that home, as well as the level of care provided by the parents. The way I see it is giving those children back to their family would very likely lead to additional harm, dare I say, even similar harm to what may have happened to Summer. It's difficult to tell if DCS made this decision purely based on optics. Like I said, the world was very captivated by Summer's disappearance, which meant that DCS's actions in proximation to Summer's case now came under a microscope. Although DCS did eventually make the right move by placing the 3 boys in foster care, I can't help but label this an embarrassing systemic failure. Even beyond the elements we have discussed already, there are many indications that it was only a matter of time before something horrible happened to one of those children. Why did it take one of them disappearing for DCS to take proper action regarding the welfare of these children? It's unacceptable, and while I see plenty of warranted blame placed on the parents, I think DCS is equally culpable and accountable to Summer and her brothers. DCS either dismissed many of these obvious hazards or they failed to properly investigate them. And that is something that is common with these entities such as CPS or DCS. Unfortunately, we see a lot of inconsistent implementation and enforcement of these policies regarding child safety and child welfare. Summer and the milk photo. Summer was 5 years old and weighed 40 pounds, and according to CDC guidelines, Summer was legally required to ride in either a car seat or a booster seat when riding in a vehicle. To delve deeper into this, I researched current models of car seats to demonstrate why DCS should have removed Summer and her brothers from the home based on this single failure. We are going to review car crash mortality rates involving children. And according to that data, motor vehicle crashes remain the leading cause of unintentional demise among U.S. children, causing about 1 in 4 unintentional injury demises. And now we see the recent national data, which estimated 156,000 children were injured in traffic crashes in 2022, and that is down 4% from the previous year. Risk factors. The CDC states that only a small fraction of children are properly restrained in their car seats. Many children graduate too soon from booster seats, leading to improper seat belt fit. If that seatbelt does not fit properly around the child's torso, it will not protect them in a car crash. They further found that rural counties have higher child traffic fatality rates versus urban counties, which we know Summer lived in rural Tennessee, so she remained at a higher risk whenever traveling in a vehicle. And as far as fatal crashes, they found that high percentages of 0 to 12-year-olds were not even buckled up. And we can see with Summer in the milk photo that she is not restrained in a car seat nor a booster seat, and she was not properly buckled into the seatbelt. Once again, demonstrating the high level of risk Summer was subjected to when riding in a vehicle. Additionally, the CDC has determined that a 5-year-old child weighing 40 pounds can safely ride in a forward-facing car seat or a high-back booster seat. The maximum weight and height limits for a forward-facing seat can vary by manufacturer, but generally they are as follows, with most forward-facing car seats having a weight limit ranging from 40 to 65 pounds and a height limit of 44 to 50 inches. And from what I can tell, if the child is within either the height range or the weight range, the seat is considered suitable. On screen, you will see on the left there is a high back booster, and on the right there is a forward-facing car seat so that you can compare the two. Either of these would have been suitable and required for Summer to ride in, as her survivability during a potential crash would increase significantly. And remember, Summer had unique risk factors based on her locale. So the fact that Summer rode around regularly without proper restraint in a car is critical information that DCS failed to address. These car seat parameters are not arbitrary. The CDC works with the American Academy of Pediatrics and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to compile these guidelines based on the result of rigorous testing, which measures the durability and efficacy of car seats. We are now finally going to discuss the disappearance of Summer's aunt, Rosemarie Bly. Rosemarie is the sister of Summer Wells' mother, Candace Bly, and Rosemarie went missing 12 years ago on August 21st in 2009 under similarly enigmatic circumstances to Summer. Rose was last seen in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. Her disappearance has been tracked by the Charlie Project, who discovered that Rose went missing just before heading out to a bar to meet up with her cousin. The bar was just 5 miles away from her home at the time, but for reasons we do not understand, Rose never made it to the bar. The FBI revealed that 5 days following Rose's disappearance, her car was found abandoned in a parking lot that is often used by truck drivers. This lot was approximately 30 miles from Rose's home, and the FBI stated that there were no clear signs of foul play. They reported that Rose carried only a small amount of cash when she left her home in August. They state that they do not believe Summer and Rose's disappearances are connected. An article published last month states that there were instances of DV between Rosemarie and her husband just prior to her disappearance, although her husband is no longer considered a person of interest after passing a polygraph test. Rose's husband quickly filed for divorce just 3 weeks after her disappearance, which raised suspicions and eyebrows. Along with a divorce petition, he filed a custody petition that would prevent Rose from returning and taking custody of their children. This article states that Grandma Candy believed that Rose Marie may have sustained an injury that could have caused memory loss. She explains that Rose had fallen off a horse 1 week prior to her disappearance, and she speculated that Rose may have become confused while driving to the bar, causing her to wander to the parking lot 30 miles away. I suppose if this did happen, she would have likely stopped when she ran out of gas. From there, anything could have happened to her, and this is certainly an interesting theory, but I think it's a likely possibility. In spring of 2025, DCS withdrew its findings of neglect, and a judge formally dismissed the allegations against Dawn and Candace. But interestingly, the three boys will remain in custody of the foster care system. I disagree with the judge's ruling on this matter because it is apparent that these children were not properly cared for in many aspects of their life. Allegedly, in my opinion, those children were far too young to be left at home alone. I could go on, but I think I've made my point. Don Wells has some criminal history that I won't specify because of the nature of these alleged acts. If you wish to see his most recent arrest, you can click on the Daily Mail article linked in the description. YouTube is sensitive to some of these topics. There are plenty of channels that discuss Dawn's past, such as the Interview Room. Chris over there at TIR makes long form content about mostly unsolved cases. I highly recommend that channel. Thank you so much for taking the time to view this video and to continue focusing energy on Summer Well's case. I have not and will not give up on her case because I do believe that as time goes on, we are coming closer to finding answers and potentially seeing that justice is served. I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say in the comments. Just try to keep it cordial, try to keep it classy in the comments, please. That's all I ask. But for the most part, I've really been enjoying these discussions that we're having. There are so many channels that cover this case. Thank you for choosing mine. If you have anything to contribute to the discussion, please share it in the comments. I try to respond to every single comment, and so if I don't respond, just give it some time. I will respond. So that's it. That's everything for now. Please look forward to another upload coming very soon. It is not going to be true crime related. It is going to be more of an industry critique. So watch out for that upload. I hope that you are doing well. I hope you are taking care of yourself. I hope you are being kind to yourself and others. Till the next one.